All right, so today we're going to focus on World War II officially beginning. When we're looking at World War II begins, we're talking about in Europe. In terms of U.S. involvement, we won't get there until probably Wednesday, just how the U.S. gets involved. If you have a good knowledge of history, we know that the U.S. doesn't officially get involved until the Pearl Harbor attack in December of 1941. But for the sake of kind of just context and reference, we're going to be looking at how the war starts in Europe in 1939. So we know that in September of 1938, the Munich Conference is going to happen, in which representatives from Germany, Italy, France, and Britain, they're all going to meet with one another, and they're going to meet in Munich, Germany. And when they meet there, Britain and France are like, we don't want to go to war. And they're looking at what Hitler's demanding, and they notice that he is demanding the Sudetenland, that area around Czechoslovakia. And so they tell him, hey, we're going to give you that Sudetenland area in exchange for peace. However, if we give you that area, you can't go around, conquering the rest of Czechoslovakia or even the rest of Europe. Hitler, being very smart, he goes ahead, he takes the deal, and then, about a month later, he invades the rest of Czechoslovakia. That was really the turning point, at least for Hitler, that Munich conference, because what it told him was that Europe was not interested in what it was that he was doing. They didn't really care. They weren't going to bother him, so he can kind of go and conquer Europe and do whatever it is that he wanted. So in October of 1938, very shortly after he conquered Czechoslovakia, Hitler's going to set his sights on the Danzig, which is an area in Poland. I want you to look at this map here. You see Germany, you'll see Poland, East Prussia, and then you'll see Danzig. Danzig is very key. Hitler's saying that he wants the Danzig area back because there's a lot of German-speaking people there. Again, he wants Lebensraum, living space for the Aryan race, and he wants to create this master Aryan race to basically conquer the world. But he also wants the Danzig because it's a port, and it's a very valuable port. You can easily transport goods and services as well as people, especially if you need military men. So he's going to demand that area back. And then, of course, the British and the French, they're not exactly going to give in to him. But then Hitler, of course, also did something very smart. He signs that Nazi-Soviet non-aggression pact in October of 1938. Again, look at where Poland is. To the left is Germany, to the right is the Soviet Union. So when they decide that, hey, we're going to sign this pact, one of the secret parts of that treaty was that they're going to divide up Poland and other territories. So Germany's going to attack Poland from the west. The Soviet Union is going to attack Poland on the east. And on September 1st of 1939, both the Germans and the Soviets are officially going to invade Poland. When they do, the British and the French realize appeasement failed, the Munich conference was a disaster, we can't just hang back and do nothing, and as a result, they end up declaring war on Germany. And by September 27th, the Polish capital of Warsaw is going to fall to the Germans and the Soviets, and World War II is basically in full swing. The capital is key. The capital really signals that that's the country, that's their strength. And so when you take down the capital city, it's almost like you're taking down the entire country. You can kind of look at the Capitol riots a couple of weeks ago. Well, there had been protests throughout America. We had seen cities destroyed or buildings destroyed, whether it was L.A., Seattle, Portland, whatever it may be. So why did we care that the Capitol building was stormed? Well, it's because it's the capital. It's what represents the nation. And so the fact that Warsaw fell was very significant because it meant that all of Poland was officially falling to both the Germans and this case the Soviets as well. And you can see a little map here of everybody that gets involved into World War II. You'll notice that Germany is aligned with Italy, and then eventually they'll get aligned with Japan as well when they sign the Axis Powers Treaty in 1940. They become known as like the Axis Powers or the power of evil, kind of however you decide to phrase it. Countries like Great Britain and France, they're going to become the allies. And then you'll notice countries such as Spain are completely neutral. So if any of you did your dictator research on Francisco Franco, you'll notice that he pretty much had Spain to his total control. So Hitler, at this point, he's taken over Austria, he's taken over Czechoslovakia, and now he's taken over Poland. So next, Hitler's going to set his sights on France. So he's also, before he even sets his eyes on France, he's also going to take over Norway and Denmark. So keep in mind those lists of all those countries that Hitler has officially taken over. Austria, Czechoslovakia, Poland, Norway, and Denmark. That is a total of 5 countries, and basically the span of, I would say, a year, maybe a year and a half. That tells you that the Germans and Hitler, they're mobilizing, and they're mobilizing very quickly. Something to also keep in mind about the French. The French are known for being the losers of war, right? They have a bad reputation of they don't know anything, they're weak, they always get sort of bailed out by everybody else. And that wasn't always the case, but in World War One and especially in World War Two, the French developed this habit of basically being losers. And now you're going to find out why. Look at this red line here, this Maginot line. Where it's strong, it's solid. So that French-German border has been pretty much what we call solidified. Like it's going to be very difficult for Germany to invade through this border. But look at the French-Belgium line or the French-Luxembourg line. It's very weak, which means that the French decided, we're going to sort of leave it be. They've got maybe like a few army personnel, but not a whole lot. If you're Germany, what should you do? Well, they sort of realized going through France is going to be a problem. However, if we go around through Belgium and attack France that way, guess what? The French will never see it coming. And that's exactly what the Germans decide to do. Well, if the French German border is strong, we'll just go around through Belgium. So in the process, they're going to take over Belgium, and then they're very easily going to conquer France. The main military method that the Germans are going to use throughout World War II becomes known as a blitzkrieg. If any of you watch football or play football, there's that play of we're going to blitz the quarterback. And what it means is that the defense is going to send as many men as possible to sack the quarterback. And the reason is if you get the quarterback out of sorts, you get the ball back or you fumble or you might get a touchdown, whatever it may be. A blitzkrieg kind of works in the same way. You attack the enemy with everything you have. All of your tanks, all of your men, all of your air force, all of your weapons, everything that you have. You kind of give them a full force. And before World War II, nobody had ever really done that before. So the blitzkrieg method is going to become very new to the world. The Germans also had a lot of other advantages. They had a lot of young men who were ready to fight. Throughout the 1930s, you had the Hitler Youth, which had really been preparing men to fight in the military. And then, of course, because Germany had been mobilizing their military throughout the 1930s, a lot of their technology is up to date, including their tanks. The Tiger tank becomes like one of the more famous tanks that the Germans developed in World War II. And so because Germany goes around through that Maginot line and through Belgium and into France, the French troops are going to fall pretty quickly. The French are going to lose 90,000 that are going to be dead, 200,000 wounded, and well over 2 million captured. And again, this is in the span of about a year, year and a half. So Hitler is mobilizing, and he's mobilizing very, very quickly. The French general Philippe Pétain, he's going to surrender to Germany on June 22nd, 1940, and then Germany is going to set up what we call a puppet government known as Vichy France. I'll come back to this in a second. But red all up there, that is France. That is occupied by the Nazis. And in the southern zone is the purple space known as the free zone, which means that the Nazis didn't necessarily have a whole lot of control in that area. Charles de Gaulle, who had been kind of like the president of France, basically, he'll get pretty much overthrown until after World War II, when he kind of like officially comes back into power. But at this point, the Germans have mobilized, again, incredibly quickly. They've taken Austria, Czechoslovakia, Poland, Norway, Denmark, Belgium, and basically France. They're moving very quickly. Next, of course, because both the British and the French decide to declare war on Germany, Hitler's like, well, we got to make our next move. So he's going to set his eyes on attacking Great Britain, England, however it is that you want to phrase it. And this is kind of a very interesting little take before we get into that. If any of you have seen Dunkirk, Christopher Nolan's film a couple years ago, and actually I'll have you guys watch a little bit of it on Tuesday. But look at that water right here, which we kind of call like the French Channel. When Germany attacks France, he's going to send a lot of the soldiers back here to this coastline, whether it's the British or the French. And the problem was this, that they could only evacuate Allied troops by the sea. The problem was this, it's going to take a couple of days for the British to get to the French side in order for them to rescue all these men. And at this point, Hitler could have completely demolished the British and French military by sending them to that Dunkirk area. They had no backup, they had no support, they really had no sort of modern day weapons that were going to protect them. And then Hitler decides to delay the attack by 3 days. Nobody knows why. Some people say that it was Hitler offering an olive branch to Great Britain, basically telling them, hey, I can destroy you, so give up now or else. Some people think that he just wanted to give his guys a break. His men had been fighting for about 2 weeks straight by the time they got to Dunkirk. And so the idea is that, he gave them a break, that they had, kind of gotten maybe a little bit overconfident and sort of thought that the British and the French weren't going to do anything. So why not give them a break? But we do know that rather than just completely decimating the British and the French, Hitler decides to lay off for 3 days. And those 3 days is going to give the British and the French the opportunity to save 338,000 troops, who, again, pretty much had no weapons whatsoever. So if Hitler had wanted to, he could have completely destroyed them and possibly had taken over Britain. Possibly. It's not for sure. Britain's very difficult to take over because it is an island completely surrounded by water. But a lot of people think that again, was a little bit of a game changer during World War II, the fact that Hitler pulled back at Dunkirk and didn't officially take over. So it's very interesting. I don't know if we'll ever know why Hitler pulled back, but it probably saved the British from being either taken over completely or even more harmed in World War II. What I think would have happened was that if Dunkirk had happened, if Hitler had completely, taken out the British and French troops, the U.S. would have gotten involved in World War II much quicker than it had. We know that the U.S. gets involved with Pearl Harbor. They probably would have gotten involved in 1940 had Hitler attacked at Dunkirk. And then, of course, even though, the Dunkirk battle ends up getting delayed, we do know that Hitler's going to set his sights on England. He really wants to attack the Air Force. Part of the reason that he wants to attack the Air Force is the Air Force to all countries were pretty much, they were new. Airplanes, get developed in the early 1900s. And the beginning of World War I, technology wasn't entirely great, but by the end of World War I, you have airplanes that start, getting produced. So by World War II, every major country that's in World War II has an air force. Hitler doesn't want to go after the Navy. We know that the British have one of the strongest navies in the world because, again, they're an island completely surrounded by water. They have to have a strong navy. So Hitler decides he wants to go ahead and go for the Air Force. So in June of 1940, he's going to attack British shipping in the English Channel. And so obviously, people are going to retaliate back. Germany's accidentally going to bomb London, the capital of Britain. I get kids every year who ask, how do you accidentally bomb a capital city? Apparently, the guy just missed his target and it ended up bombing London. Again, when you attack the capital city, it's never a good thing. So Britain's like, well, we've got to retaliate. And they decide that they're going to go ahead and bomb Berlin, Germany's capital, right back. When the British do that, it pretty much sets Hitler off. He gets super pissed off. He's like, okay, if this is how the British want to play, then this is how we're going to fight. So he gets furious and he decides that he's going to focus on bombing the people of London to just completely terrorize them. And this becomes known as the Battle of Britain, or even sort of the London bombings. At night they would have to turn off all of their lights and go into a complete blackout. And the idea was that way the Germans wouldn't be able to see the British and know where to drop their bombs. Initially, at the beginning of the Battle of Britain and Hitler just bombing London on a continuous basis, the British had radar to help detect the Germans. The Germans, however, didn't know that the British had radar, and so they were trying to figure out how are the British able to see their planes. And so the British had started a rumor that the reason they were able to see their planes was because their soldiers ate carrots, and that carrots helped, the British soldiers' eyes, and they're able to see them better. And so then the Germans started spreading propaganda throughout their own military of you need to eat more carrots so that way you could see the enemy better. And then the Germans found out that the British had radar, but that's where that myth comes from, that if you eat carrots, it's better from your eyesight. It's because it's the rumor that the British had started during World War II, so that way the Germans wouldn't figure out that the British had radar, although eventually they did. After 3 straight months of bombing in Britain, Hitler's going to cancel the invasion in October of 1940, but at that point the damage had really been done. I had a student a few years ago whose great-grandfather was a part of the Royal Air Force, and he and his wife had gotten married during the Battle of Britain, and they spent their wedding night in a bunker because the city was just being consistently bombed on a regular basis.